So welcome back again students to another video lesson. So after nating i-discuss yung direct variation, our next type of variation is inverse variation. So let's start. So for our lesson objectives, so kagaya nga ng sinabi ko dun sa direct variation video lesson natin, so pare-pareho lang po yung objectives. So pinapalitan lang po natin yung type ng variation. So first, we will be illustrating real-life situations involving inverse variations. And then we will translate inverse variation statements as a relationship between two quantities given by table of values, a mathematical equation, a graph, and vice versa. And then of course, we will be solving word problems involving inverse variation. So what is inverse variation? So an inverse variation is a relation which states that the product of the two variables, dependent variable y and independent variable x, yields a constant k value. So dun sa direct variation, in order to get the value of k, the constant of variation, we need to divide the dependent variable y by the independent variable x. So dito sa inverse variation, you don't need to divide. Just simply multiply y and x. And then, yung makukuha doon is yung constant k value. So the statements, y varies inversely as x, y is inversely proportional to x, may be translated mathematically as xy is equal to k, or y is equal to k over x, where k is the constant of variation. So, kagaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina, you just simply multiply x and y, and then makukuha natin yung value ng k. And then, yung formula for inverse variation is y is equal to k over x. So, tatandaan nyo po kapag nabasa po natin o nabasa ninyo yung word na inversely dun sa variation statement natin, automatically, magmumukha siyang fraction. So, meron po siyang numerator and then denominator. So, hindi pa rin po naman nagbabago dyan. K is still the constant of variation. So, for quantities x and y, an increase in x causes a decrease in y as well. So, habang lumalaki po yung value ng x natin, mas lumiliit naman yung value ng y natin. So, hindi kagaya dun sa direct variation, habang tumataas ang value ng x, tumataas din ang value ng y. On the other hand, a decrease in x causes an increase in y. So, ang kabaliktaran niya, kapag naman lumiliit yung value ng x, lumalaki naman yung value ng y. So, dun sa direct variation kasi, kapag lumiit ang value ng x, lumiliit din ang value ng y. So, inverse variation statements can be translated as a relationship between two quantities given by, of course, using table of values, mathematical equation, graph, and then vice versa. So, kung kagaya po yan nung direct variation statement. So, pwede po nating i-translate din sila using those mentioned. So, the first one is using table of values. The table below shows the number of men needed to finish the job in 5 days. So, ayan. So, as you can see, yun sa first column natin, makikita natin dyan yung number of men. Nag-i-indicate dun sa x, which is an independent variable. And then, number of days, y, which is the dependent variable. So, as you can see, yung bilang ng men is tumataas. So, from 10, 20, up to 50. But the number of days, from 30 up to 6 days na lang. So, anong logic doon? Siyempre, habang dumadami yung mga nagtatrabaho, mas kumukonti yung oras na matatapos yung trabaho. Siyempre, kapag konti yung nagtatrabaho, mas matagal na matatapos yung trabaho. So, another, using mathematical equations. If the number of working days, D, varies inversely as the number of men, the relationship can be translated using a mathematical statement as D is equal to K over M, where K is the constant of variation. So, yung D po dyan is yung number of working days. So, yung kanyang mathematical statement is D is equal to K over M. So, kagaya nga ng sabi ko, habang dumadami yung number of men, mas kumukonti yung number of working days. So, based from the given table, so yung table natin kanina, yung use 2015, so isang point po yan, substitute the values of D and M in D is equal to K over M and solve for K. So, para makuha natin yung constant of variation which is K, so kailangan natin gumamit ng isang point dun sa table of values kanina. So, ang gagamitin natin is 20 and 15. So, yung 20 po dyan is yung number of men. And then, yung 15 naman is yung number of working days. So, sulat lang natin, D is equal to K over M. And then, i-substitute natin yung D tsaka M. So, yung D natin dyan is 15. And then, yung M natin is 20. Again, yung D dyan is days. And then, yung M naman, number of men. So, and then, next na gagawin natin, i-cross multiply natin 15 times 20, that is 300. So, the value of K, or the constant of variation, is 300. And then, plug in K, or the constant of variation, to D is equal to K over M to form the mathematical equation that is D is equal to 300 over M. So, since nakuha nating value ng K is 300, i-substitute lang natin siya dun sa mathematical statement na D is equal to K over M. So, K is 300 over M. So, kapag dinivide natin yung 300 sa M, makukuha po natin yung number of working days. So, using graph naman, the graph of an inverse variation is a hyperbola. Also, its graph never passes through the origin and never crosses the x-axis or y-axis. So, kung yung direct variation, ang graph niya is straight line. So, ang graph naman po ng inverse variation is a hyperbola. So, hyperbola, it has something to do with parabola. Related siya sa parabola. And then, bakit naging related siya sa parabola? It's because meron din siyang curve. Okay, hindi gaya ng direct variation, straight lang siya. So, yung inverse variation, na graph niya is hyperbola, meron siyang curve. And then, yung graph niya hindi nagpapas, hindi dumadaan sa origin, sa pinakagitna. And then, hindi rin siya nagka-cross sa x-axis or y-axis. So, like for example, ayan. So, yung table natin, number of men, 10, 20 up to 50. Then, yung number of days, 30 up to 6. Yan yung ano natin, yung graph natin. Yung vertical axis natin dito is the number of working days. Ayan, yung 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 na may interval na 5. And then, yung horizontal axis naman natin, number of working men, yung x, so na may interval na 10. So, pwede nating i-plot yung mga points. So, yung 10 and 30. So, ayan. Itapat lang po natin kung paano tayo nagpa-plot ng points sa coordinate plane. Ganun lang din po dito. Wala namang pinagkaiba. So, and then 2015, 30, 10, 40, 7.5, and then 56. So, pwede rin naman natin silang i-connect. Ayan, pag kinonect natin yan, pasensyahan nyo na yung drawing. Ayan. So, ganyan po ang magiging itsura ng graph ng inverse variation. Para po siyang hyperbola. So, hindi po siya straight line, kagaya ng direct variation. And then, yung equation natin of variation, D is equal to 300 over M. So, kung gusto nyong i-check kung tama ba na makukuha natin yung mga values ng D, yung Y natin, yung number of days, so pwede natin i-divide yung 300 dun sa M, so na number of men. Like for example, 300 divide natin sa 10, makukuha yung 30. Then 300 divide natin sa 50, makukuha natin yung 6. Let's have the first activity. Write an equation for each inverse variation statements. So, kagaya lang din po nung direct variation. So, ganun din po ang gagawin natin dito. Kaya lang, inverse variation na. For example, number 1 and 2, the first statement, the speed s of motorcycle rider is inversely proportional to the time t. So, paano natin yun isusulat? So, yung speed niya, s, and then yung constant of variation natin will become k, and then over time, which is t. So, tatandaan po natin, kapag inverse variation, meron po siyang numerator and denominator. And, laging numerator natin dyan is yung constant of variation, which is k. So, yan po yung ating equation. Next, the base of a parallelogram varies inversely as its height h. Okay, so yung parallelogram po, ito ang kanyang itsura. Meron po siyang base, and then meron din siyang height. So, paano natin papakita yung equation niya? Simple lang, b is equal to k over h. So, kadalasan, yung k dyan, yung constant of variation, nagpe-pertain siya dun sa area ng parallelogram. So, for examples number 3 and 4, the cost C of renting an apartment varies inversely as the number of n occupants sharing the rent. So, yung cost ng apartment na rent is nakadepende sa bilang ng occupants. So, kung ilang katao yung mag-rent dun sa apartment na yon. So, pwede natin siyang isulat as C, capital C is equal to K over N. So, ito na po yung ating equation. And then, number 4, the hourly rate of a performer is inversely proportional to the number of songs he sings. So, kung iintindihin natin dyan, yung hourly rate, so yung kada oras na binabayad din sa performer is nakadepende sa bilang ng kanta na kanyang inawit. So, pwede natin yung isulat as R is equal to K over S. So, ayan. Yan po yung ating equation. So, for our last example, the acceleration A of a truck is inversely proportional to its mass M. So, that is A is equal to K over M. So, yan po yung kanyang equation. For the next activity, determine if the following tables illustrate an inverse variation between variables. If they do, find the constant of variation and the equation of variation. So, let's have example number 1. So, yung values ng x natin, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, which is increasing, pataas. And then, yung values ng y naman natin, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, decreasing naman, pababa. So, isulat lang natin yung formula for inverse variation, that is y is equal to k over x. And then, pwede rin natin isulat as k is equal to xy kung constant of variation ng ating kinukuha. So, to check kung constant ba yung nakukuha nating product, kung i-multiply natin yung x and y, pag-multiply natin yung x and y. So, 1 times 64, that is 64. 2 times 32, that is 64. And then 4 times 16, that is also 64. Multiplying 8 by 8, that is also 64. And finally, 16 by 4, that is also 64. As you can see, isa lang po yung value na nakuha natin, which is 64. Therefore, this is an inverse variation. So, para kunin po yung kanyang equation of variation, y is equal to k over x. Okay. So, y is equal to the value of k, that is 64, over x. So, ito po yung ating equation of variation. And then, sulat lang ulit natin, yung constant of variation natin is 64. For the next example, ayan. So, sulat lang natin, y is equal to k over x, or k is equal to xy. So, para makuha natin yung value ng k, pag-multiply lang natin yung values ng x and y. So, 3 times 25, that is 75. 5 times 15, that is also 75. Next, 6 times 25 over 2. So, pakita natin dito. 6 times 25 over 2. Pwede natin cancel yung 6 tsaka 2. So, yung 6 magiging 3. And then, yung 2 magiging 1. And then, i-multiply natin yung natira. 3 and 25, that is 75. Next, 8 times 75 over 8. Kakancel natin yung 8 tsaka 8. Matitira na lang po is 75. And then, lastly, 10 times 75 over 10. Again, pwede natin cancel out yung 10 and 10. Matitira na lang po 75. As you can see, yung nakuha nating value is constant, which is 75. So, we can write it as k is equal to 75. This is the constant of variation. So, to determine the equation of variation, sulat lang natin y is equal to k over x. Then y is equal to the value of k, which is 75 over x. So the equation of variation is y is equal to 75 over x. Then for the last example, so yung values ng x natin, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then yung values ng y natin, negative 45, negative 15, negative 9, negative 6, negative 5. So, puro sila negative dun sa y. Puro naman positive dun sa x. So, we write y is equal to k over x, or k is equal to xy. So, to check, multiply lang natin yung x and y. So, 1 times negative 45, that is negative 45. 3 times negative 15, that is negative 45 also. Multiplying 5 and negative 9, negative 45. 7 times negative 6, that is negative 42. So, as you can see, yung nakuha nating value dito is negative 42, hindi po siya negative 45. Then, yung last naman natin, 9 and negative 5, that is negative 45. So, hindi tayo nakakuha ng constant na value. So, kasi yung unang tatlo, negative 45, and then yung pang-apat, negative 42, at naging negative 45 na naman dun sa last natin. So, therefore, this is not an inverse variation. So, I hope naging clear yung discussion natin kung bakit hindi siya inverse variation. It's because hindi natin na-obtain yung constant value. So, kung negative 45 lahat ang nakuha natin, we can consider this table of values as an inverse variation. For the last activity, solve the following inverse variation word problems completely. So, let's have problem number 1. If y varies inversely as x and y is equal to 12 when x is equal to 7, find y when x is equal to 21. So, sulat lang natin yung equation ng inverse variation, which is y is equal to k over x. And then, isubstitute natin yung y is equal to 12 and x is equal to 7. So, the value of y is 12. And then, k over the value of x, which is 7. Yung next na gagawin lang po natin dito is mag-cross multiply. So, magiging k is equal to 12 times 7. So, the product of 12 and 7 is 84. So the constant of variation for this given problem is 84. Next, for us to determine the value of y when x is equal to 21, we use y is equal to k over x. And then, we substitute the constant of variation, which is 84, over the value of x, which is 21. Then, we just simply divide 84 by 21. It will give us 4. So, the value of y when x is equal to 21 is 4. Next problem, if f is inversely proportional to g and f is equal to 6 when g is equal to 4 over 3 or 4 thirds, find g when f is equal to negative 20. So, sulat lang natin, f is equal to k over g. And then, we substitute the value of f, which is 6, equals k over the value of g, which is 4 over 3. Ayan. And then, kagaya ng ginawa natin kanina, magko-cross multiply lang po tayo. So, magiging k is equal to 6 times 4 over 3. Then, i-rewrite lang natin, k is equal to 6 times 4 over 3. And then, pwede natin i-cancel yung 6 tsaka 3. Meron silang common factor, which is 3. So, 6 divided by 3 will become 2. And then 3 will become 1. And then we multiply the remaining 2 times 4. That is 8. So the constant of variation is 8. Now, how do we solve for the value of g? So, sulat ulit natin. F is equal to k over g. Next, the value of f is negative 20. Equals the value of k, which is 8 over g. And then, mag-cross multiply lang tayo. Magiging negative 20, g is equal to 8. Is this the final answer? No, we have to divide both sides by negative 20. So, tatandaan, kailangan matanggal po yung numerical coefficient ng kung anumang variable lang nandyan, and then make sure positive yung variable na yon. So, i-write lang natin, g is equal to negative 8 over 20. So, this will be simplified. G is equal to negative 2 over 5 or negative 2 fifths. So, why negative 2 fifths? It's because meron po silang GCF, which is 4. So, our answer is G is equal to negative 2 fifths. Next problem. If W varies inversely as the cube of Z and W is equal to 5 when Z is equal to 2, find W when Z is equal to 4. So, meron tayo ditong keyword, which is cube of Z. So, cube root of Z, cube of Z are different. So, sulat lang natin, W, yung una nating variable, and then is equal to K over the cube of Z. So, paano natin susulat yung cube of Z? Simply, Z cube. So, kapag cube root of Z, ito po siya. Pag naman, cube of Z, Z cube. Next, substitute the value of W, which is 5, equals K over the value of Z, which is 2. So, 2 cube. And then, K is equal to 5 times 2 cube. Ayan. K is equal to 5 times 2 cube, that is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So, that is 8. So, the value of K is 40. Next, find W when Z is equal to 4. Using the same equation, W is equal to K all over z cubed. W is equal to the value of k, which is 40, over z, which is 4 cubed. W is equal to 40 over 4 cubed, that is 4 times 4 times 4. So, i-multiply natin yung 4 3 times. Then, that is 64. And then, isi-simplify natin yung 40 over 64, which is, yung GCF niya is 8. So, di-divide natin by 8. So, the value of W when Z is equal to 4 is 5 over 8. Okay. So, mahalaga po kasi ang pag-simplify po natin dito. So, basic rule po yan sa mathematics. So, we have to simplify everything. As long as pwede pa silang isimplify po natin. So, for the next problem, the number of days needed to finish a job varies inversely as the number of men working. It takes 30 days for 8 men to finish the job. How long will it take for 15 men to finish the same job? So, yung number of days ng matatapos yung trabaho nakadepende dun sa bilang ng taong magtatrabaho. So, ang sabi dun sa problem, so 30 days daw ang working days para matapos no 8 men. So, paano natin isusulat yung equation? So, the number of days, so yung days, i-denote natin as D. And then, yung constant of variation natin, K, over number of men working, so M na lang din. And then, i-substitute natin yung 30 days tsaka 8 men para makita natin yung, or makuha natin yung value ng K, yung constant of variation. So, D is 30 equals K over M, which is 8. So, cross multiplication, K is equal to 30 times 8. So, the value of K is 240. So, yung product ng 30 and 8. Now, how long will it take for 15 men to finish the same job? So, rewriting the equation, D is equal to K over M. D is equal to the value of K, which is 240. And then, for M, 15 men. So, isa-substitute lang natin 15. And then, divide lang natin yan, yung 240 tsaka 15. And that is 16. To answer the question, it takes 16 days for 15 men to finish the same job. So, lagyan natin ng unit, 16 days. Ayan. Mahalaga din po yung paglagay ng mga unit. Like for example, yung hours, days, minutes, kilometers, centimeters, inches. So after discussing inverse variation, so yung next video lesson natin will be joint variation. So, na-discuss na natin yung dalawang uri ng variation, direct variation and inverse variation, na topic natin sa first week. So, yung joint variation, topic natin siya sa next week, so sa week 2. So, kasama nung isa pang uri ng variation na maidi-discuss natin pagkatapos ng joint variation. So, yun lang. Maraming salamat.